Alright, today we're going to talk about King of the Hill. I don't know why this show isn't discussed more. I love it. It's one of my favorite shows. It always has been since I was a child. But today we're going to talk about wholesome episodes. Honestly, this was hard to pick from because there's so many wholesome episodes. It's a very good show about friendship and family and just traditional values, but not to an extreme. So today we're going to look at the most wholesome King of the Hill moments. And if you're not subscribed here, my name's Keenan. I run this channel, Lemony Fresh. I talk about mostly movies and television, sometimes games. Well, not yet, but soon. If you're interested in this video and you enjoy it, please give it a like and consider subscribing. This list isn't particularly in order, so I'm just going to start listing them off. You can decide which one's more important for you. There is one particular that I find very wholesome, so I'm going to keep that for number one. Otherwise, everything else is off the list. Alright, so let's get started here. Season 8, Episode 19, Stressed for Success. This is the episode where Bobby joins a quiz bowl. They need somebody to fill their slot for pop culture, since none of the academics are familiar with it. Bobby gets involved. While he's an ace at this subject, eventually as things go on, he learns to get some competitive spirit. And unfortunately, the stress starts getting to him until one day he just snaps. I particularly like this episode because of how it ends. This is one episode where Hank actually asks Bobby not to work so hard, which is usually the opposite of his MO. And the episode just ends with them watching an episode of the Andy Griffith Show. It's very wholesome. Alright, next episode. Season 9, Episode 5, Dale to the Chief. This is the episode where Dale starts having doubts about his conspiracy theories when he learns that his theory was disproven in the Warren report.
Absolute, total, complete, perfect sense.
And now he is totally pro-government, which is the opposite of his character typically. Meanwhile, Hank is going through a bunch of red tape with the government to try and correct a mistake that was made on his license, labeling him as a female and not a male. Unfortunately, Dale gets so caught up in this pro-government business that he reports Hank to the authorities under the assumption that he may be a terrorist, which is horrible on its own. But the episode still ends very well, where Dale comes to Hank's aid in the best way that he knows how. Bureaucracy, red tape, and knowing all levels of government mundanity. This is one of the few episodes where Hank is very glad to have a friend like Dale. Alright, next up, Season 10, Episode 8, Business is Picking Up. This is the episode where Bobby gets an internship helping a guy who runs his own business as a garbage pickup man, particularly poop, but other garbage as well. The guy who picks up poop, Peter, is actually voiced by Johnny Knoxville, another one of my favorite comedian, stunt performer, actors. This episode's all about dignity and self-worth, and just respecting the wishes of somebody else's parents. Obviously, Hank doesn't want Bobby picking up poop and to vomit, and it kind of works for Peter because he's an attractive guy who's very confident. But for Bobby, that might not work out as well. So luckily for Hank, Peter is actually a pretty good guy and ends up kind of demonstrating to Bobby the downsides of having a job with little self-respect, unfortunately. Here's another good one. Season 8, Episode 10, That's What She Said. This is a good episode where Strickland Propane hires a new employee who's a little foul-mouthed. He enjoys jokes of a sexual innuendo nature, and kind of makes everybody uncomfortable around the office. They enjoy it first. They play along with the jokes, and they're all kind of like teasy, like school children. But after a while, unfortunately, it's just not something that goes with business, and everybody's watching their own back. What I particularly like about this episode and why it makes it extra wholesome for me is that at the end of the episode, Hank forces Buck to make a choice between the new employee who he has inclination towards, or Hank, who's been his loyal employee for as long as he can remember and will do anything he says up to this line. And Buck makes the right decision. Great episode. Alright, another episode about Strickland Propane. Season 7, Episode 16, The Miseducation of Bobby Hill. This is an episode where Bobby works at Strickland Propane for a summer. They have a competition among the salesmen. During grill season, they try to see who could sell the most units. Hank always comes in top, and he uses typical traditional methods, old salesman style things where courteous service and just being a genuine guy hoping for the best wins out. Unfortunately, that doesn't work this year, where Joe Jack teams up with Bobby And with their flashy methods and kind of shady sales tactics, they end up outshining Hank. But it all comes back at the end, and Bobby learns a lesson about planting seeds and hoping for long-term success and just solid customer service over any tricks.
The first time I read them, they made no sense, but then it started sinking in.
It usually does.
Great ending to a great episode. Now we're getting into some interesting territory here. Season 7, Episode 12, Vision Quest. This is the episode where John Redcorn kind of comes out as Joseph's father, at least to Hank, and explains to him that he wants Joseph to go on a vision quest as his cultural tradition in his tribe.
This is an important ritual among my people. Don't half-ass it.
He's reached that age where he's having dreams and he needs to interpret it properly about how he's going to kind of go ahead as a man from this point. And unfortunately, because of the John Redcorn's predicament, Dale ends up leading him down maybe the not so great path. This has a great ending where even though John Redcorn doesn't necessarily expose who he is to Joseph, he's still able to give him the advice that a father needs to give to his son and a moral lesson that he needs to learn for his adulthood. It's just a really great lesson to everybody, honestly, but I really like how it plays out.
I'm not shooting the panda.
Like a lead buffalo, strong, independent. That will be your path.
Alright, getting a little older here now. Season 5, Episode 9, Chasing Bobby. This is the episode where Hank gets a new truck. I don't know why I know this, but his first truck is a 1993 Ford Ranger, and I believe his second truck that he purchases in this episode is a Ford 2150 Super Duty. I wanted one for the longest time. They don't really hold up that well now. So in this episode, Hank kind of gets emotional because his truck is dying. He tried everything to save it, but there's just nothing he can do. Bobby kind of sees this as a bonding opportunity and tries to get Hank's attention by trying to save his truck, but it doesn't end up working out the way they want, and Hank and Bobby have a falling out. And Bobby just kind of makes it worse, unfortunately, leading to Hank's old truck actually getting destroyed. Hank and Bobby have a falling out. Bobby decides to start walking home, and Hank has to go find him using a test drive of the truck at a dealer he's at. The episode ends with Bobby and Hank bonding and Hank realizing that there are more important things than the truck in his life. Very wholesome stuff.
Love this truck.
Yeah, me too. But when we get back to the dealership, pretend you hate it.
Alright, also from Season 5, Episode 1, the season premiere, The Perils of Polling. This episode took place around the time of the 2000 election between George Bush and Al Gore. And likewise, they are both featured in the episode. Hank has trouble committing to George Bush, who he was a shoo-in vote for, because he traditionally votes Republican ever since Reagan years.
Exactly the way President Reagan scared hundreds of millions of Russians with his Star Wars death beam.
I miss voting for that man.
Hank wants to vote Republican, but after shaking George Bush's hand and finding it limp, it, I guess, goes enough against Hank's moral code that he cannot vote for the man.
Oh my God. His handshake. It's limp.
Or at least he's very conflicted. But he doesn't want to end up voting for Al Gore. At least back then. If only he knew. Anyway, what's great about this episode is it's Luann's first time voting in any election. And Hank is trying to present to her the importance of casting a vote. Unfortunately, he ends up a hypocrite when he's conflicted about who to vote for. But he ends up coming back to vote just because he needs to prove an example to Luann and show her that voting does matter. It's really great. They don't show who he votes for, which is interesting, but I've always liked this episode. It's one of my favorites.
So, who'd you vote for, Hank?
Nuh-uh. If he tells you, it won't come true.
Going back a season, Season 4, Episode 16, Movin On Up. This is the episode where Luann finally moves out. And what's great is she moves to the house that's empty across the street. Of course, she can't afford it herself, so she gets roommates who also attend college, but they end up kind of being a roommate from hell situation. And the best part is, now that she's on her own and doesn't have to live under Hank's house, she ends up kind of turning into Hank. This episode probably has some of the funniest lines, especially from Luann. I love her as a character.
My God. I have become you. Oh.
I think she's probably the best character throughout the entire series. She has the most character development from season 1 to season 13. Luann is absolutely the best. Rest in peace, Brittany Murphy. She did a fantastic job with her.
Yep.
Yep.
Also from season 4, episode 18, Won't You Pimai Neighbor? Pimai Neighbor? Yeah. I don't want to say it wrong. So this is the episode where some Buddhist monks come to visit Khan and his family, as well as, I believe, Chang Wasana-san.
The chain train stops for the ladies.
And they are coming to see if Connie or Chang are the reincarnation of a particular lama in their religion. Inadvertently, Bobby passes a test, and now they believe that he is the reincarnation of the Lama. So what happens is they get him to do another test with a kind of higher ranking Buddhist monk, and just the way the episode resolves itself is very clever. And it really reminds me of the number 1 pick on our list. Yeah, I said it was ranked. It's not ranked. There's one that I really like. The rest are unranked. But this is an episode that shows the great strength of the writing of King of the Hill and how wholesome it can be without abandoning its values. All right, getting close to number 1 here. Season 4, episode 2, Cotton's Plot. So in the season 4 premiere and season 3 season finale, there was this whole plot line where Peggy and Hank go skydiving. Peggy's chute doesn't open and she ends up paralyzed. This episode picks up after that. She's going through rehabilitation. Somehow she lived, by the way. She's going through rehabilitation because her entire body has become damaged. So she has to rebuild all of her muscles. Rehabilitation is not going very well for her. And one day, on the way to get her ride, she ends up crawling on the floor while Cotton shouts demands at her. And it's her hate for Cotton that actually motivates her enough to move forward. She later learns that maybe she's getting more success by working with Cotton, who has a military background, than going through the rehab where they want her to take it very slow. The best part about this episode is that we rarely see Peggy and Cotton finding any common ground, so that's really interesting. It's very different from the rest of the show. But on top of that, they have a very wholesome moment despite Cotton never really having any of one of these moments. I think this might honestly be one of the few moments where he actually shows his heart on his sleeve. And it's for Peggy, of all people.
You ready to hate me more than you ever hated anyone in your life?
I already do.
Then we're halfway there.
But actually, there is one other moment, and that's going to be our next episode. Season 7, episode 15, An Officer and a Gentle Boy. In this episode, Hank enlists Bobby at the academy that he wanted to go to when he was a young lad. Unfortunately, Cotton never thought that he was made of the right stuff, so he never actually ended up attending. Bobby does get to attend, and Hank can't feel more proud of him. Bobby thinks it's going to be very hard because of all of the stories that Cotton has told him about his time at the academy. Except when Bobby gets there, well, it's the 90s, and now everything's different, even to Hank's surprise, which is a welcome change for him. Unfortunately, as usual, Cotton gets his hands on it and ruins everything and takes over the headmaster's position at the school. But he particularly doesn't want to go soft on Bobby, so he really grinds it into him and chews him out. But Bobby doesn't kind of work that way. He has a little strength that nobody really anticipates, and that's what's wholesome about this episode that shines through, after finding some reassurance from an old friend. Alright, this time we're going to go with a Bill episode. Bill doesn't get a lot of wins, so when he does have an episode with one, it's quite wholesome, especially because of his friends having his back through pretty much everything. But I think this episode is the penultimate storyline for that. Season 6, episode 13, Tanking It to the Streets. This is the episode where Bill finds out that he was part of some army medical program where they were trying to make winter soldiers, basically. He was told he was getting placebos all of these years, but in fact he was getting some sort of gene therapy which may or may not have worked. He loses all faith in the army at this point, and he goes into a spiral of a deep depression, getting drunk and hijacking a tank from the army base that he works at. He drives it all the way back to Rainy Street, and now the rest of the boys have to settle things for him before he gets in too much trouble. Except what's wholesome about this episode is that Bill actually settles things himself very well, too. I really like seeing this little development for Bill. It's great that they didn't change his character completely, but it's nice that he has moments like these in the episodes.
I heard what you guys said, though, that I was brave and honest and a good friend. Do you still think that now that I'm not dead?
Yep.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, and now we're getting really old. This is probably going to be the oldest one on this list. Season 2, Episode 10, Bobby Slam. In this episode, Bobby joins the school wrestling team. Bobby and Connie spend their spare time watching wrestling on TV, and both of them are obsessed with it, as was common in the 90s. I had a brother who was... I know a lot about wrestling, despite never watching it. That's just how it was. Everybody was into it at the time. Anyway, so Connie wants to join the wrestling team as well. Unfortunately, it's an all-boys sport. Peggy sticks up for her after realizing the misogyny of the coach in place and forces them to take on Connie as another teammate. Even though Bobby's doing well on the wrestling team, which is the opposite of what his character normally does in athletics, the coach wants vengeance against Peggy and matches up Connie against Bobby. So now they're stuck with a dilemma, but I think this episode probably works itself out in the best way possible. And like other episodes I've mentioned, this is just peak King of the Hill writing, and the resolution is so wholesome, it will just put a smile on your face. It's wonderful.
I want to go to a party school. Yeah, Chico State.
Alright, getting close to number 1 here. Season 3, Episode 9, Pretty Dresses. In this episode, Hank is having a large Christmas party at their home. As expected, all of their neighbors are invited, including Bill. Unfortunately, Lenore, Bill's ex-wife, left Bill around the holidays, and they've always been quite hard for him. In this season, Bill pretty much snaps, and he starts dressing himself up like Lenore, telling himself that she's still around, living this weird double personality. It's not the weirdest thing he's done, surprisingly, in the show, but it's still pretty weird. But that's what's also wholesome about it, because for Hank to resolve the issue, he has to completely step out of his comfort zone and just straight up confront Bill, which is something he never really wanted to do. But because he's such a good friend to Bill, he has to put it all on the line for him. And it's a great episode about friendship, self-respect, and getting over a traumatic past.
Yep, the wind's at your back, buddy. Merry Christmas.
Alright, so one more with Peggy. Season 11, Episode 1, The Peggy Horror Picture Show. This is a late episode in the series, but it's actually one of my favorite as well. Particularly my wife's, probably, because she's very into RuPaul's Drag Race. And this episode is very much about drag queens. In this episode, Peggy is mistaken for a drag queen by an actual drag queen. She is totally oblivious the entire episode, which makes for the most humor out of the episode.
I don't understand why you invited me to do the show with you in the first place. Oh my God.
And what's even better is that Hank's obliviousness is also coupled on top of this.
What are you talking about?
Carolyn, my friend, is really a man who dresses up like a woman.
Well, now hold on. That doesn't make any sense.
That's one of my favorite recurring themes of King of the Hill, just how traditional Hank is, that he just cannot even comprehend certain things.
Wow, I want to know everything. Do you and your brother have time to grab a beer?
Sure.
But he's always open to people, and he's always friendly to everyone he meets, regardless
what do you
of
say
their
to a beer?
lifestyle.
I say, where have you been all morning?
Good one.
Yeah, I have to remember that one.
Peggy realizes that instead of being a joke that she's mistaken for drag queens, she's respected and admired by them because of her particular style and her little eccentricities that the average woman just simply doesn't have, and Peggy's not afraid to show. calling her more womanly than anybody else.
Drag queens model themselves after strong, substantial, fearless women. Women who aren't afraid to wear purple gauchos and MC Hammer glasses. Women who only need one name to describe themselves, like Liza, Barbara, and Cher. You, my dear, are simply Peggy.
I have got to have these platform sneakers.
They are yours.
This is it. This is my number one most wholesome King of the Hill episode. Season 7, Episode 8, Full Metal Dust Jacket. In this episode, Peggy buys a bookstore, having a dream that she can join the book club and, I guess, mingle with society's intellectual elite. So what happens is she doesn't realize that the bookstore was always failing. The lady she bought it from was only part of the book club because she gave them free books. She ends up investing a lot of time into reading the books that they're assigned for that week, only to find out that nobody else really does it for the books, and they're kind of just for show. And unfortunately, instead of finding the friend she wanted to, she just finds a bunch of people who make her look like an idiot, which she kind of comes across here as. I mean, she is really laying it hard instead of reading the room, but that's just Peggy for you. Dale comes into the store one day planning to buy a book to conceal one of his guns. Another patron ends up coming in, inadvertently sees Dale's gun, and asks him if he could buy it. Realizing the business opportunity here, Dale and Peggy partner up, and Dale starts selling tons of guns out of Peggy's store. It's not really legal, but they get around it because Peggy makes every customer that leaves with a gun also leave with a book. So they're really just buying the books and getting the gun as a little bonus prize. What's great about the ending is that after Peggy feels so distraught and disheartened by the book club not turning out to be what she wanted to be, she does find a book sharing community with the gun nuts that she sells to, who have all read the books that she's been handing out and want to discuss more about them.
But who's to say it doesn't also symbolize the government's intrusion into the lives of private citizens, as suggested by our friend here who won't give us his name?
I love this ending so much. It's everything I love about not only King of the Hill, but Mike Judge's style of humor. And particularly, I would say Greg Daniels probably has a big part in this as well. Very good episode. Highly recommend.
Using realism with symbolism again.
I'm about to symbolize my gun to your head.
So anyway, those are some episodes. Definitely watch King of the Hill. I'm not sure where you can even find it these days, but I would argue it's really just worth buying. There's quite a few seasons, 1 to 13, but you can probably get them for pretty cheap now at a secondhand store or something. Really, we should all have King of the Hill in our lives. So anyway, thanks for watching. What was your favorite episode of King of the Hill? What was the most wholesome moment you can remember? I have more episodes to go through because this list is pretty long, but if there's anything I missed that you want to mention, I'd be happy to discuss it in the comments. Thanks for watching.